Oh, yeah, no, yeah, okay, no, really, thank you.
So, you know the rules, no filming, audio recording, we've got one going on back there, and you're welcome to take pictures and all the good stuff, so enjoy.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's pray real quick and hope we don't do any damage to this church, being me mostly. Father God, we just thank you for this day. Thank you for the people in this room. Thank you for just the ability to tell stories in a different way beyond what the filmmakers tell. And thanks for the opportunity to have come alongside different filmmakers and just help me to share the experiences that you've given me over the years in a way that helps them as filmmakers. And it's in your son's name we pray. Amen. Well, again, thank you all for being here. How many of you are filmmakers? How many of you are, what are some of you other folks? Supporting staff. That, go ahead. Mom. I mean, supporting staff is really what I get to do when I'm on set. My daytime job is marketing communications, almost solely in the faith entertainment world. But when a movie project comes along that I get to be a part of, I come on early on. So like with Kendrick's The Forge, I was on set. We had a 6-week shoot. I was on set for 4 of the 6 weeks, helping lead the BTS crew and then also being the official unit publicist. And we'll get into all of that stuff. But the one thing that's really important, and that's why we decided to do this segment, is as filmmakers, especially small independent films, you're trying to keep the budget as low as possible. The last thing you're thinking is, oh, let's have an extra person on the set. But the reality is, once you're done with your film, you can't go back and capture anything that you would have liked to have had when it comes time to start marketing the film. So interviews with cast and crew, the behind the scenes shots, the photographs that you want, all that, you have to do it on the set, which means you need to be prepared before you get to set to have that content. So the question I'm mainly asked when I'm on a set and the crew sees me and like, what is it you do? Everybody has a crew department. Everybody's connected somewhere. I'm that guy that just kind of wanders around and nobody quite knows what they do. And you know, it's fair because there are a lot of days and a lot of projects. I'm not really sure what I do. But the basic thing where I ended up was basically I was a sports writer. I got into sports writing because I like sports and I like writing. And what I realized is I really, really liked interviewing people. I like asking questions. I like hearing answers. I like asking questions based on answers. And over time, my career kind of shifted. I went into the communication side of things. Was fortunate enough to work with a cucumber and a tomato. And that's kind of where I got the idea of the opportunity that exists to help tell stories that you creatives tell. So I always say my job is from the marketing side, is to tell, when you're done as filmmakers telling a story on film, my job is to tell that story in such a way that makes moviegoers want to go see that movie when it's in theaters. When I'm on set, those are the eyes I'm looking at. What are the really interesting stories that are happening on set? What are the things that could encourage and inspire an audience to want to be a part of the movie because we're telling a story that happened on set? So I had mentioned BTS producers. One of the things I do, I work with the camera crew that captures everything. You don't trust me with important equipment. Like this is probably the highest end equipment I want to have on me. I work with a set photographer. I can't autofocus an autofocus. I can't focus an autofocus camera. I have a very limited skill set, but what that does is allows me to lead the teams that capture the content and make their life as simple as possible because it's a really hard job. If you've got the camera, if you're holding the GoPro, running around, getting in people's faces, not everybody wants you in their face, do they? Not every time, nope. So you have to kind of get the basics of what you're looking for. So basic overview work. I work with the studio and the filmmakers to make sure we're capturing the content needed for marketing down the line. I'm responsible for content deliverables. to make it life easier on the videographer and the photographer, it ends up on my shoulders to make sure that we get to the studio or the producers what they're looking for. And then unit publicity, it's a weird little role that I've kind of morphed into that coming from the behind the scenes producing side, but the unit publicist, one of the official roles, title, things that you have to do with that is create the production notes. So after the wrap, I go through all the transcripts of the interviews that we've done and basically tell the story in a way that maybe one press member will read. But it's like 20, 25 pages worth of content that you put together that as a reporter's doing a story about the movie when it's coming out, you've created that background. So they get nuggets of insight that they may not get from something else. I'd said this to the people that were here earlier. This is not me lecturing. I'm not a lecturer. I'm not a teacher. Please ask questions. Anything comes up, anything I've said, I don't know what that means, that's fine. I would love to take breaks and not listen to myself. So if you have a question, ask it at any time.
I guess we also are trying to wait that maybe you'll answer the question before we ask.
Yeah, you know, I'll tell you this. If I am going to, I'll say wait just a minute.
Okay.
But if I'm not, then I'll go through. So if anyone have questions yet? Yes, sir.
So NDAs, okay? So you're working on a film. You sign non-disclosure. It's top secret. Not supposed to get out. Okay. So NDAs are big. Okay. But and we know that hey, all right, and you may talk about hey, well, still I'm on set, so I'm going to gather all the content marketing assets that I need to. Okay. That's another question for a few minutes later. But my question is, but what if but at what threshold do you determine is an NDA really required? Because, or does it really behoove the production to actually get as much publicity out as soon as possible when the cameras start rolling?
Okay, so Arthur's asking NDA, non-disclosure agreement. A lot of times that comes in more on a script stage. So you've written a script, you want to see if there's interest in it, you start sending it out, you might ask somebody to sign a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA, so that what you've read, somebody else doesn't take that and make a movie out of it. When you're on set, it's more of a decision as if you're going to get word out, publicity out, because, I mean, people know you're filming. You can pretend you're not doing it. A mayonnaise commercial, have you ever heard that joke? If you come upon a film crew and you're like, ooh, what are you guys making? 90% of the time they're going to tell you they're making a mayonnaise commercial. And what will your interest level be at that? You walk on. So it's just an industry joke. But the reality is, unless you're a non-union project and potentially working with a couple union people, you in my mind as a marketing guy, you want as much publicity as you can get. When you work with a studio, they have different opinions. A studio will tell you when they want to start getting word out. If they bring people on set, they'll have those people that aren't involved with the movie potentially sign an NDA. They will tell people when they're allowed to start talking about the movie. And again, that all depends on the project, the studio, so there's not a direct answer to that. From a marketing standpoint, again, I think the more information you can get out there, as long as you can keep the content flow going, that's what you're trying to do. So if you start, an example, when we did Courageous, that was filmed here in Albany. There's a young lady from the Sherwood Church who was a film major, a broadcast major, and she came back home during the shoot, and we had her stand up in front of the camera every time, each day, and kind of give an overview of what the previous day had been and what they were looking to shoot that day. So it was like new stand-ups. And she was great. We would write out not even a script, we'd just write out an outline of what we were looking for, give her the mic, camera would roll, and boom, she'd get 2.5, 3 minutes in. And we had 6 weeks of that kind of great content. Kendricks, if you followed them at all, have you ever heard of the Kendrick brothers? Yeah, okay. They normally will film in a summer, and that movie will usually come out the end of the next summer. So that's 12, 13 months window. We had great content for 6 weeks, and then we went quiet. We went silent. and that was not a good thing. So back to the question, I would say you start as soon as you can, as long as your studio and your producers are good with it, and as long as you can keep the content flow going. If you shut it down for 2 months or 2 weeks, that's not good. You want to be able to continue to do that. So that means you want to capture a lot of BTS. You had a question too.
I was going to ask, like, what falls in encompassing of BTS we consider?
That will come into here.
Okay.
So how about if we start with photo? Any photographers around? Okay, one of the things you need is a set photographer. It's actually a crew position, part of the camera department. Back in the old days, and I am old, but I don't know this part of it. I learned it from, did you ever see the Erwin Brothers Mom's Night Out?
Yeah.
They had, their set photographer was an old Hollywood guy. And it was, he was probably in his 70s when he was shooting it. And I learned more from him in those 6 weeks than I have learned from anyone. Just the history, the stories. But in the old days, cameras, you'd have the clicking sound. And so they would have special equipment that allowed the camera to get the shot. So the key thing you're trying to do as a set photographer is get the same shot as the camera is getting. You're trying to get the same emotion. So as the scene is being shot, you're taking photos. You're at the same eye line as the camera. It's an interesting role. I'll kind of run through what I have in here. So with the photographer and working with the photographer, one of the things you want to make sure is the photographer's read through the script, and you and my role as producer of it, and their role as photographer is just highlighting key scenes. And then you're working with the director or the studio to confirm those scenes that you've selected that they see are key, and also to have them add to that list. And then you're looking at the shooting schedule to kind of plan out what you're going to shoot each week and what you're going to shoot each day. And then one of the key things that the photographer has to do, and I do with them, is connecting with the first AD and the DP, because those are the people that are pretty much running the set, and they're either going to be your best friends or your worst nightmare. And the more you can show that you know what you're doing, and the more that you can listen to their advice, the better off you're going to be as a set photographer. You never want to obviously get in the camera sight line. You never want to be in the actor sight line. You want to be unseen. Whenever I interview somebody on camera, I tell them, you're looking at me, pretend the camera isn't there. And what's the first thing they do? Stare at the camera. But the reality is, if you're doing your job well as a set photographer and nobody knows you're there, and afterward they're like, oh, did you get that shot? Yeah, got that shot. So key for a movie photographer, if anybody was in the session I did with Paul and Kelsey Anderson yesterday, Paul talked a lot about set etiquette. So just knowing the rules of the set, knowing where you can be, where you should be, where you shouldn't be, when to shoot. One of the things I learned from Rich Peluso of Sony on a set was rehearsals belong to the director and the actors. So when they're rehearsing a scene, it seems like that'd be a great time to get the photo of that, right? Because they're working through. We learned now that really isn't. They need that time to prepare themselves to decide what they're going to do, how that's going to look, what it's going to be. Then when they get on set in the camera, before camera rolls and they're rehearsing there, then you can do your photos, or when the camera's rolling. One of the key things with a photographer, you need to be flexible, but you also have to stand your ground. So if you know you have to get a scene shot, if the studio's told you scene 6C is the most important scene in the whole movie, and you have to get that, and the first AD is saying, we're moving on, you're like, can we just wait for a minute? Can I get that shot? Can the actor stay here for one extra minute? Can we get that shot? So again, flexible, but standing your ground where you need to. So at the Forge, Sony kind of ran things for us. We had to deliver at least 30 photos a day from set. I would work with the photographer. There was a really cool team of folks that worked as our photographer, but I would work with the head photographer, Kim, and we would pick out what we thought were the 30 best shots. Interesting aside, at least 27 of those had to be scene shots. So 90% was scene shots. We'll talk to the other 10% here in a second. So you're trying to capture the still image of a scene rather than them setting up for a scene. And then that extra 10%, those behind the scenes photos, they're looking for something like Alex in action. So Alex interacting with an actor, director interacting with actors, the actors interacting with crew. It's not a photo yearbook and you're trying to get every department, everybody smiling, having fun. It's really the idea of can we get the scene shots, and then if you do happen to get some BTS shots that are good, it's things that might be used in the marketing. So, yes.
Has this been evolving now that people seem to be more into BTS? Because I know some folks are like, oh, I don't like losing the magic of seeing any BTS footage. I don't get in that. But it seems like this media-driven culture, now that the bar is high as to what all, because I'm thinking, really, you have to have 10% of this and that, but that's evolved through the years. Where did it come from?
That's a great question. And again, each studio is different, and what people are looking for is different. But the idea with still photography is that you're really capturing a moment in the time of the movie. When we get to BTS and we're talking video, that's much more of the behind the scenes. So the same scene, if we're filming, go back to Courageous, where they're doing the scene where Ken Bevel gets catapulted out of the car. Not catapulted, but you know what I'm saying. That where he's slingshotted out of the car. You know, BTS is shooting that from an angle where we're seeing kind of all the setup that was involved in that. And you're seeing that action. The photographer, the unit photographer, is taking the shot that you're seeing in the movie itself, where you're seeing Ken come running out. So it's that idea of those are pieces that we can use in marketing the film. It's funny. Aaron Burns, who you all know as an actor or as a director. We're starting to get the word out about his next movie, which is Truly Wonderful Life about Jimmy Stewart. If you look at all the stories that have run on that, there's a shot of Jimmy Stewart with the little girl, Zuzu, on his back from It's a Wonderful Life. That's a set photography. You don't want all the setup that went into that. You just want the shot of the dad and the daughter smiling because Clarence got his wings. Okay, so that's basic. So the basic set, you're on set pretty much the whole day. If you're a set photographer, you're going to be there all 12 hours. You're going to probably be involved in a lot of the turnarounds. So whatever the camera's getting, you're getting. You're not having to shoot every minute of the 12-hour day. A lot of it is the editing, but it's involved. And then the big thing with the set photographer is the gallery. Anyone know what the gallery is?
Still pictures?
Nope. So the gallery is the formal photo shoot from which the key art, the movie poster, will be built. So gallery, we actually did the gallery, I think, one room over from here. You've got the big white, Arthur, help me out, what's that called, the big white thing that you have behind you? Not the green screen, but the paper, like if you're doing a photo shoot? Backdrop. So you've got the big white, thank you. Big white backdrop behind you. And then you start working with the different actors. And the beauty of gallery and with anything else is the scheduling again. So we'll get into that in a second. But the gallery is a pretty involved process. First part of it is, who are we going to capture? It's usually the top actors in the film. So we'll go through the Forge. We did Aspen, who plays Isaiah. We did him solo. We probably did close to half an hour shoot of him solo. So all kinds of different things that we'll talk about here, what we're looking for. But so we did Aspen solo. We did Priscilla Shire, who plays his mom. We did her solo. We did Aspen and Priscilla together as mother and son. We did Cameron Arnett, who plays Joshua. We did him solo. We did Aspen and Cameron together as discipled and disciple maker. We did Cameron with his wife, real life wife BJ, who play husband and wife in the movie. And then we did Karen, who plays Miss Clara, solo. And then we did Karen, Priscilla, and Aspen together. And then we did, have you guys seen the gist of the movie The Forge? one of the things is you get the group of men together that are the Forge. And there were about half a dozen men that were in the Forge. So we did shots of those men together, and then those men with their mentorees, their disciples. So that was 12 people together. So you have all that as your white screen background. So there's a lot of scheduling involved. You have to know who's working, which days they're working. Do they have a window available on a working day that we can do that shoot? If not, can we bring them in? And a lot of that depends on if they are on for the whole set, the whole shoot, then we can bring them in on an off day. If they're day players and you're paying them a daily rate, we have to find time on one of the days they're shooting to get them in, because we're not given a budget. So BTS and gallery and all that, we don't have a budget to say, okay, we will pay the X hundred of dollars to have that actor in for 2 hours. Okay, so we've talked about all you need. So the second AD becomes your best friend at that point. Second AD is in charge of all the cast and scheduling and all of that. There have been some amazing second ADs I've worked with, where at the end of a long day, we will sit down and just kind of map out what the gallery is going to look like. One of the things you discover is that the gallery becomes part of the call sheet for the day. So if Aspen is going to have his gallery, he's got his scenes listed on the call sheet, and then he also has gallery shoot from 3 to 5 kind of thing. The second AD is also the person who's making sure that the departments are aware that the photo shoot's happening. What departments would you need involved with the photo shoot?
Lighting and camera?
Lighting and camera was close. The photographer's actually going to do the lighting and the photo. So they won't be in the movie department, won't be involved.
The director needs to know where their actors are going to be.
That's where the second AD comes in. So that they'll make sure. Wardrobe, makeup, hair. Interesting one, props.
Yeah.
What if you've seen anything with the Forge, there's a sword involved. A number of the shots that we took with Aspen and Aspen with Cameron involved that sword. And then the PAs, who the second AD oversees, that will be the ones that will make sure that the actors are there and more importantly, get back to where they're supposed to be after we're done with them. But yeah, you have to make sure everybody's looking nice, the right outfits. It's an interesting and exciting element of the shoot. It's add-on for the actors, but if you're working with amazing professionals, they love it and they're really good. So as unit publicist, I'm directing the photo shoot and working with the photographer. We're looking for a range of emotions in the actors. If everybody just stood there like this, it wouldn't be a great movie poster. Looking for the range of emotions, looking for different poses that are natural for the character. With Aspen, I think we did 3 different outfits in his shoots. Again, just trying to get a wide range. So probably should have set this up before I started talking about the gallery. The ultimate goal of the gallery is that we've got enough content that whoever's designing the movie's key art, the poster, has what they need to create that poster. We'll be releasing the Forge poster, I want to say early next month. And I can place in my mind what that setup was that they took. The interesting thing you'll see too is there's some elements in that poster that I didn't describe in what we captured. And they decided, it's kind of background images, they kind of were able to take that off of the film. So I don't want to lose the gallery, but there are a lot of ways to get the things that you need. So even as we're talking unit photographer, if you're shooting a high quality film, screen grabs work as well. But there's just something about the eye of a photographer that captures some beauty that is unique to the still camera. So that is gallery. I'll be honest, that's probably the most stressful thing I do on set. Yeah, yeah. My son does some weddings every once in a while. I'm like, how do you do that? It stress me out. He's like, if I don't get it, I don't get it. And just good attitude, but I'm like, not my attitude. Any questions about unit photography? Set photographer. One of the last things, I'll answer another thing. One of the last things a set photographer usually does is takes a crew shot at the end of the wrap. Those are special for the crew. Were you going to ask a question? Oh, okay, all good. Okay, so that's it for photo for me. Unless anybody has any questions, and we'll move on to video.
I think the photographers who decide the poses and all that, and the directors and all them decide how they want the people to be portrayed as, like you said,
Yeah,
poses and all that.
It's a good combination between the unit publicist and the photographer. I always would defer to a photographer in terms of the right angle, the right lighting, and everything. But if there's certain emotions that I want to make sure we have of the actor, that's kind of my job, to direct that.
Do you guys ever draft up a poster idea first and then take photos?
That's a good question. Do we ever draft up a poster, look and feel first, and go for that? Usually not, especially a bigger production. The studio has the people that they work with, and they know. And those people have no connection to the movie until afterward, and they've had a chance to read through the script and look at the images that were captured and then start to build. Amazing the number of people who speak into a final poster.
I've been a part of that. It's like you feel like you're in the board committees.
Yeah.
It's like impressive.
There are a lot of folks that have a lot to say. Okay, on to video. Biggest difference between photo and video content is with video, you're truly BTS. As we mentioned before, you want to get a feel for the production as opposed to getting the shot that's going to be in the movie. And why do you think that would be? You're already capturing the shot. It's why we've got these huge cameras and this gifted camera team and lighting team and all of that. So yeah, you'll see a standard BTS shot is the director sitting at the monitor watching as they're filming. So you're over his shoulder and you're seeing the scene in the background, but you're also seeing it there and you're also seeing the director. So just the idea of you're bringing somebody into the story and letting them experience it through your camera lens. Like in a drone scene, we're not going to put another drone up there to fly next to the drone that's capturing for the movie. What we're doing is we're filming the drone operator as he or she is getting the drone ready, as the drone starts to rise up. We're getting the reaction of there's nothing like a crew watching a drone. It's like we're little kids again. Everybody gets so excited to see this big flying thing with a camera on it. You get the shot of the monitor watching what the drone is capturing. It's fun. Another example, obviously you're not interrupting an important moment between director and cast, but you're getting the shots when you're just kind of wandering around if the director's talking to an actor. You're not necessarily capturing the audio, but you're just getting that emotion of them communicating. Yes?
I didn't know if you wanted to answer your question before. If there's something emotional, I feel like there needs to be a privacy or delicacy and not being intrusive. If someone gets emotional or something you captured, but you really shouldn't release it. I don't know.
Yep. So the question or the comment was, in emotional scenes, how do you handle that?
Or like if the director is directing the actor and they're trying to privately work
Yep.
something out, I don't want to be intrusive.
So do we want to be intrusive with BTS? And the answer would definitely be no. We want to be respectful. The BTS is there for pretty much the entire production. You don't want the director, you don't want the actors, you don't want anyone feeling like you're stepping on their toes or you're capturing something that you shouldn't have. One of the things, for example, you don't film an actor in makeup. That's a private moment for them to get ready for what they're going to do. They're working that day. An example that we would use, especially on a Kendrick Brothers set, a group of people have gathered to pray for a scene. We're going to have our camera there capturing that. Yes, sir.
So you're saying that the main concept of BTS is to capture a parallel
That's a great
It's not
question.
so much the mechanics of it, but just the parallel story.
Yeah. I'm repeating the question just because of the video, but the question is, do we look at BTS as a parallel story to the movie story? Is that correct? It is a way to look at it. That is one of the things. Another is you're capturing the history of this being done. So it's kind of a little documentary.
But your focus is not necessarily on the mechanics of it, if you will.
Say that again.
Your focus is not on the mechanics of it, if you will. The equipment being used, the motion of the equipment being used, or the action of that.
In some ways, you are capturing that because if you're watching the gaffers rig up the lighting, there's just something it's on a rainy day and they're getting everything set, so it's going to look like it's sunny inside the house. Yeah, you get that. You may never use it, but you get it. It could be a standalone. It doesn't have to be. I guess that's the best way I could answer this. It doesn't have to be part of a story arc to be in BTS. It just has to be something. My friend over here says that he goes in front of an actor and asks them with a GoPro after a scene. It's part of that. It's the idea of a stand-up interview. You just shot a really good scene, a really important scene. You talk to the drone operator after he's flown his mission, as long as it went well. It's snippets that eventually can be woven into a narrative. But the key is that you're getting those snippets. You're getting the spice of life, each of the different key elements, key moments on set. Does that answer it partially?
So basically it's a documentary of it because you need B-roll to make a documentary.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like grabbing the story, you're grabbing the moment, you're grabbing what's happening, so that way you can add layers.
She was saying it's kind of like a documentary, and in a way it is. If you look at a number of, especially back in the day of DVDs, you would have the bonus features, and one of the big bonus features on a lot of films is the making of. Where does that come from? BTS. So the future of that, who knows? Because you don't have the added material. So it's really moved from a lot of great content never saw the light of day before the movie because it was being saved for the bonus features. Now almost all content, great content, is seen as part of the marketing of the movie. So something great in the movie, great about the making of the movie, we'll use as a marketing tool in the run-up to it. Yes, ma'am?
As far as the marketing portion of it goes, like what platforms do you usually post that on, and like how often? Like, do you post like one picture, like? Yeah.
Yep, so the question is how do we decide how we're going to market in terms of social media, how often, those kind of things. And the answer, of course, is it varies. It depends on if you're working with the studio versus independent. Independent, you can be much more aggressive in what you use, and you kind of get to control the narrative. You're working with the studio is kind of guiding that narrative. You're working with the social media folks, preferably that understand when's a good time to post, what's a good platform to post on, how often should we be posting, all those kind of elements that make up a good marketing team. It's a group of people working together. Hey, this is what we're looking to do between now and release. From a email standpoint, how often are we going to hit people? From a social media, different platforms, are we going to use the same content on the different platforms, just alter the sizing? Or are we going to have different platforms speak in different languages to people? All those go into the marketing with film. But a great question. Another thing with so with BTS, it'd be really easy to want to capture every moment. We talked about this yesterday, just in passing. If you're on a 30-day shoot, 12 hours a day, you're filming every moment. How many terabytes of footage would that be? Yeah. So you don't have to always have the camera rolling, but at the same time, you don't want to miss having your camera rolling on something important. So again, the idea of you're looking ahead before you get onto set, you've gone through the script, you've noted key scenes, you're looking at the daily schedule, what's coming up today, what are the ones we have to make sure we get. One of the things we talked about yesterday too is it's really, really important as BTS that you're cataloging what you're capturing. Because the worst thing you can do is just hand over that drive with hundreds of hours of film and, hey, go have at it, video editor. But if you're cataloging it, then the video editor knows. And then the fun thing for me is getting transition from set onto marketing, knowing that, hey, that was a really good stand-up interview we did with that actor that day. Can you find that? Boom, it's right there, it's been logged in. Yes?
And with that in mind, is it normal to say, hey, at the end of the day, I'm gonna clear out the stuff that didn't cut it, or you're gonna say that later?
No. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
the best thing you can do as a shooter is make sure you're backing up everything that you shot and make sure you've cataloged everything that you shot. Again, not in,
Get rid of stuff that you're like, I don't wanna keep moving this thing up, or is it a no, don't get rid
no,
of it?
it's I would say it's a it's a creative decision. You don't want to get rid of great content, obviously, so you almost err on the side of not getting rid of content. But if you're shooting something and you're like, that just didn't go well, you can get rid of it pretty quick. But again, the key is long 12-plus hour days, just finding the time in the day to get things cataloged, to get things backed up, and make sure that your batteries are always charged both on your camera and in yourself. Yes, sir.
What about departments? Like, do you, like, feel free to go into a department, or, like, do you sort of stay out of a department?
Do you mean to capture content from that department? Okay, so the question is, how do you interact with departments if you want to capture BTS of them? Best thing you can do, if they're in the middle of setting up, is A, stay out of their way, but B, because they're doing it, so again, you're setting up a rig for the lighting, there's a lot of involvement in there. Or you're outside on a windy day and you're seeing the grips just holding on for dear life to keep the flag from blowing away. That's happening. You want your camera there. You don't want to be in their face because they're busy making sure the flag doesn't blow away. But you can shoot from a distance and get that shot that you're looking for.
You want to capture the sweat coming from their brow during that.
Yeah. Probably, the close-up is not the best moment because they were not going to be real happy.
Keep struggling.
Exactly. You didn't struggle enough, dude. Yeah.
Fogging the lens.
Does that make sense? Okay, so, and the other thing is, be respectful of somebody. If you say, hey, I would really, okay, we just had that crazy thunderstorm blow through and we got this great footage, now I'm gonna go talk to the lighting director about, or the head of electric about what that was like for them. They're probably really stressed out and really thankful at that moment that all their crew is healthy, and you just want to be respectful and give them some space to breathe. Maybe the next day you talk a little bit about that on camera. One of the fun things of BTS is the stand-up interviews. So again, a scene has just been filmed, really cool moment, and you just check with the first AD and say, hey, can I talk to the actor real quick for a minute? And you just say, what was that scene like for you? What was it like filming that? What emotions are going through you now that you know that you've captured that? And again, it's just something you have in your back pocket. Will it ever see the light of day? We won't know until we get into the marketing of it, but if you don't capture that in the moment, you will never get it. Okay, so from a video perspective, first AD, director, DP are really important. Have good relationships with them, let them know where you're going to be, ask them where you can be is more important actually. You never obviously want to get in a place where you're disrupting what they're trying to get done on set. And I think the best way, it's funny, I talked about I was a sports writer. As a sports writer, you can't do anything unless you have these really gifted athletes that are competing. Otherwise, you're sitting in an empty stadium writing about nothing. So you're there to chronicle what has happened as a reporter. That's really what BTS and unit photography are. You're there recording the history of this film being made. And there will be moments that, after I covered a World Cup, after a World Cup game, you used to, in the US, you go into a locker room and interview people. After a World Cup game, you wait for them to come to you outside. And you may wait longer than you want to, but it's at their discretion. We, as the behind-the-scenes team, we're at the discretion of the actors, of the director, of the DP, of the first AD, the people who are in charge of the film. So again, you don't have to shoot every scene, but you have to shoot every scene that you know that you need. You don't want to be missing anything. Fun example, well, not really a fun example. So, Mom's Night Out. Some of you said you saw that, right? Middle part of that title is night. We did 6 weeks of shoots, 3 weeks overnight. We were on, toward the end of the last week, there's a scene in the movie where the dads have been overtaken by the kids. And it's just total chaos. And we shot that for hours. And it gets to be about 3 in the morning, and our BTS shooter is getting sick, physically sick. He just feels awful. I make the executive decision, go home, get rest, we're done. About 2 hours later, the producer is in my face, why are we not shooting this element of this scene? I'm like, we shot it 38 times. No, but you missed this. Like, yes, we did, I'm sorry. There's certain times you just have to take a loss and realize we have let down a producer, but at the end of the day, we still have everything we're going to need for the marketing of the film. So, again, it's a lot of thinking on your feet. It's a lot of problem solving. That's actually one of the two things I really love about what I get to do are the interviews, the question asking, and the problem solving. We can have a beautiful mapped out plan for the day, the week, the month of shooting, and it could go all out the window 15 minutes in. This doesn't mean can't. We still have to capture the content. How are we going to do it differently now that everything's out the window? Questions?
When you're marketing and you're going through all this footage and you're looking through the photos and things, what is like the main core message that you're trying to share with people? What is the thing that you're trying to market? Obviously you're trying to market the movie, but what is the core message you want people to get?
Okay, so the question is, what's the message you're trying to get across with the marketing content? And to be honest, it depends on the movie. You're looking, for The Forge, we'll emphasize the importance of discipleship. We'll emphasize the importance of mentorship. We'll show both of those in action from set. One of the really cool things on the Forge set was every department had PAs that were being built into by department heads and people that had more experience than they did. So you had a mentorship experience, but you also had the discipleship experience too, where a normal BTS crew is 2 or 3 people. We had at one point 9 people, because the whole idea was the Kendricks wanted Paul and Kelsey to be mentoring and discipling a group of young filmmakers that wanted to get into this. We had one young man. If you saw The Heart of the Forge, it closes with, when the title sequence is kind of the sword, animated sword, and it says The Heart of the Forge. That was a young man who spent most of his summer from California, spent most of his summer in Albany, Georgia, working on the animation of that. He wants to animate. He doesn't want to be an animator, but he wants to do animated elements in movies. And this was his chance to learn how to do it and be built into by a loving couple that wanted to see him succeed. So they were watching out for his health, watching out for making sure that he was always feeling a part of the team, even though he didn't have a camera on his shoulder all the time. But what he did will be seen by more people than any of us will get the opportunity to work on. Okay, so one last thing with video. Did you have a question?
Yeah. So when you're doing video behind the scenes, what rig would you typically?
I am so not the right person to ask. I will introduce you to my friend Paul Anderson, who works with the Kendricks, and he was the one that was shooting for them. And that, again, I have no, it's really funny. My son I'm a writer, so I'm a storyteller with words. My son ends up being a video photographer, visual storyteller. Like, where did that come from? But I honestly, I don't know. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and the less I clog up my brain with things that aren't going to mean anything to me, the better off I am. So I will find out. And Paul Anderson is here. He works with the Kendricks. He is a great BTS shooter. I've worked with him on 2 of Aaron Burns' films and 2 of the Kendrick brothers' films, and he's a great guy, and he would help you with all the rigging.
What about with the cataloging? I'm sure you have a system or software or Excel or something.
Have you noticed, are you watching the slides that I'm putting up here? Yeah. Other,
Notepad, something.
I'm not really a slide guy, and I'm not a spreadsheet guy, which
How are you cataloging?
I'm trusting people. That's I need the videographer doing that. I need people. And what we did with the forge that was so beautiful is Paul's wife Kelsey is the organizer. When Paul and I had worked together before, we're both a little more on the creative side of things, and I would ask him questions, and it was the first time I worked with him. It was like, he's not listening to me. So I'd get a little closer and ask him the question a little louder. He was busy, focused in on what he was needing to get done. We add Kelsey into that mix, and we have everything planned out. We have everything cataloged. We have spreadsheets that people seem to like and understand. It's a different language. I don't speak it, but it's fun. So yeah, part of it is hopefully you all are more skilled than I am at things like that. But there are ways we can get you answers to that. If you're looking for the actual system that we've used to catalog stuff, I can find that out for you. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to share about were EPKs. Anybody know what EPK stands for?
It's the packet.
You're nodding.
Yeah, it's the pack, I mean,
Yeah,
I
you
do,
used
I
to.
don't know, oh, he's nodding, I was nodding too, sorry.
Well,
I don't know what it exactly stands for, but I know they have to create them a lot.
electronic press kit. Thank you, Arthur. Yeah, so the old school press kits, you'd have all this print material and photos and everything that you would present to the press when you're marketing your film. Electronic press kit, it's the opportunity, if you're television, if you're a podcast host, if you're a YouTube channel thing, we create interviews with the key cast and the key crew that then can be used in those settings. So Alex and Steven will not do 10 straight weeks of interviews, as much as we'd like them to on the marketing team. They have lives, they have families, they have all that. They will do a series of really important key interviews, but we will also make available some really great interviews with Alex and Steven that we shot on set as EPKs. So if you've seen The Heart Of, that was released a couple days ago on social, you see the difference between a stand-up interview where after a scene I may ask you a question and you answer and we move on. EPKs is a more involved process where we're looking at 30 to 45 minutes of a sit-down interview. Perfectly lit, great, beautiful backdrop. In The Heart Of, you'll see Stephen Kendrick he's sitting close up. Behind him in the shadows is a Mustang, which has something to do with the movie. And behind them, even the background is a loop of the film that we had at that point rolling. So it's visually stunning. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for something that says big movie set, and this is something you can use on your network show. Yes?
So most of these are all just pre-rolled, and the Q&A or interview is a faux interview, just asking the question, you're already.
Oh, yeah. So
Yep.
Yeah, so we would give, if somebody say, hey, we want an interview with Steven, sorry, he's not available, we've got EPK, do you want to know what we have there? And so we'll work with our press team, our PR team. They'll say, hey, these are the 7 best answers that Steven gives us. We probably did an hour-long interview with Steven.
So the interviewer still writes his own question, but based on the already given answer.
Nope, so it could be either way. So what the PR team would do is go and look and say, okay, here are 7 answers that we want to use. Here were the questions that were asked, so that the media member has that and they can do it. So, a local Keokuk, Iowa television station is interviewing Steven thanks to what we did. So you see the camera on their face say, so Stephen Kendrick, tell me about your new movie. Boom, Steven comes on, answers that question.
So it's not authentic, but it gets the message out.
Wow, that's hurtful. Very authentic. No, it's movie magic. It's television magic. Yeah, the smaller markets especially, you see that a lot, where or you have an entertainment reporter out of LA that does the actual interview, but then that interview is available for smaller stations around the country.
Available for rebroadcast. Get
Yep.
Permission.
Yep. So yeah, it's a funny world. So real quick, what you're looking for the interviews, you look top line cast. So top 4, 6, 8, depending on what the story is. Those people you want to do a sit-down interview with. Definitely want to do the director. Depending on the film, you may do the producer or producers and the writer or the writers. On Aaron Burns' Legacy Peak, we're out in Colorado filming in the Rocky Mountains, and the writer of that script, Matt, was on set when we were there, so we interviewed him. You may or may not use it, but it's good to have. Funny aside, I worked on a movie last year where we sat 3 characters down together for an EPK, and one of them is like, I have been in movies, he's probably 70 years old, he's like, I've been in movies my entire life. I have never once seen one of my EPK interviews used. And I took that as a challenge. I'm like, okay, we're going to use you somewhere. So we did. But the other thing we do with them, in addition to what the media does, is we use them as marketing material too.
So if you're doing an EPK, it's a known, you're not actually doing face-to-face or Zoom interview type thing. Are the actors knowing that and doing that with a different inflection, like leaning, like they're hearing them ask the question, or to kind of make that more?
Yeah, are we trying to make it that it would work with a non-existing interviewer? I would say no. It needs to just be a natural conversation. That's one of the things I love personally about EPK is, we'll have to have a list of questions that, again, if it's a studio project, the studio has to sign off on, make sure that they're good with the questions. If it's independent, you probably want to run it by a producer just so you're not winging it, make sure they're good with the questions. But the thing I love doing is asking you a question, listening to your answer, and then doing a follow-up or 2 follow-ups or 3 based on what you've said, as opposed to jumping on to question number 4 because we just finished question number 3.
I've seen that a couple of times where it's easier to see is where, like you said, you've got this super high production, high value interview, which like in 4K, and you got the interviewer in like 720, and obviously they didn't come from the same place.
As a marketer of movies, I'm just happy to see my content out and about. The more people that learn about the movie before it opens, the better we do. The more they find out after, well, I didn't know anything about that movie. The more I want to get in a different business like making coffee. Yeah. So with EPK, Second AD again is your bestest bestie in the whole wide world. They're the ones that are going to schedule the dates for the actors. Again, it goes on the call sheet. They're the ones that are making sure that hair, makeup, wardrobe are all part of the equation. Interesting thing with that, so like when we had the Men of the Forge, we had all those interviews that we wanted to get done. We had a normal size hair, makeup, wardrobe. They had to increase it for when all those men were there and the younger men that they were mentoring. So it's 12 extra actors. And then they brought in specific people to help us out to make sure everything that, because again, you don't want to do a film formal interview and have the actor looking in a way that they're not going to want their EPK used. So again, you're looking for film quality, so you use the hair, makeup, and wardrobe folks from the film, or they bring in extras. So again, you need a look and feel that's really engaging, that feels professional. It doesn't have to be as blown out as what we did with Steven. We did all the Men of the Forge downstairs in one of the rooms of the church because we filmed all the scenes in the Forge. If you want a little behind the scenes, go across the hall after this. That's the Forge room. So all the restaurant scenes in the Forge were filmed across the hall in that room. But that said, we only had a few minutes with each of the guys in the Forge. So we would, in between takes, we'd run them down to where they needed to be, get the interviews, and get them back up to where they needed to be. So it wasn't as elaborate of a shot, but it still looks really nice. One of the things from an EPK interview standpoint, it's really important to make sure that the actor has been involved with the movie before you sit them down for the interview. So the Men of the Forge were only here for 3 days. We aim to get them on that 3rd day. They've been in character, they've understood the story, they're owning it a little better. Again, you've got an actor for a week, aim to get them maybe on that Thursday or the Friday of the week that they're there. You have somebody for 6 weeks, aim for maybe the 4th or 5th week to do their interview because they've become that character. They know that character much more deeply than they did when they just read the script. key of the questions is you're asking about their character, them talking about their character, themes and story, the themes of the movie, the story of the movie. You're asking about working with their fellow cast members, the director, things like that. Just general information that will be helpful, again, not only for the media, but for us as marketers. A couple of other notes, we have to be mindful with the AD department of the time that we've said that we need with them. So if we said, hey, we can get that interview done in 30 minutes, it's getting to be 25 minutes, you're wrapping it up and getting them ready and asking one last question. You don't ever want to get yourself in trouble with the AD department because you need to have that good working relationship throughout. Director's always the hardest EPK to capture. They tend to work every minute, every scene, you're like, oh, we've got this little block where they're turning it around for an hour and a half. They're already thinking ahead to what that shot's going to look like. So somebody with Alex, who is the most gracious human being you'll ever meet, the last 2 movies that he's directed, we have shot his EPK on a day off. He makes himself available. So we get everything set up, he comes in, we interview him for about an hour, and off he goes. A lot of times I've had to, on other projects, set up a time after we wrap, or even after we've come back, where you don't capture the director on set, you get the interview afterward, just because their mind is so consumed with what the film they're making. Again, we are there to serve. We're there to serve the movie, we're there to serve the filmmakers, we're there to serve the cast, and we will do whatever we need. But again, you need to have it. The thing you can't go back and do is get the actors after they're gone. They've contracted for that film. It's not to say it's impossible, but it's to say you should never plan on getting an actor after. Occasionally a deal can be arranged. I worked on a movie where the actor had to leave. He was supposed to be shot on a Saturday after he wrapped, and he wanted to do something in the town where the film was being made, and we made an agreement when we got back to the U.S. that he would make himself available, and his team made him available, and it worked out well. But again, you can't rely on that. You really need to make sure you're getting your people when they're there. Last thing I will bring up is wardrobe. Birthright Outlaw, 19th century Western. If you look at the interviews from that, all the actors are in character. They're wearing their 19th century Western wardrobe. It's really cool. We shot in the mountains of Arizona, and it's just this beautiful look and feel that we had for it. The Forge, the actors were in just their own comfortable whatever they wanted to wear. The key is whatever you decide, it needs to be consistent. So if you decide you're going to do in costume, then all the actors you're interviewing need to be in costume. If you're saying, hey, just wear your normal clothes that you feel comfortable with, then you need to make sure all the actors are. You don't want to have somebody in a timepiece, 19th century garb, while somebody else is dressed like they would go to the Walmart tomorrow. Any questions? We're running low on time.
With people having phones and cameras, what do you do with all that? And sometimes you have really good
Yep.
stuff.
People having phones and cameras, what do you do with that? To Arthur's question earlier, a lot of times the set will say, no, we're asking you not to share what's going on. We don't want people to know where we're filming. We don't want people to know that we are filming. So actors, crew, all that, they have stuff. We'll give them a timeline and say, okay, you can start sharing that now. In terms of using it for EPK, there are occasions, never for EPK, but for BTS, there are occasions we'll use something. Somebody will have caught something. The young man talking about a GoPro. A lot of times we had a behind-the-scenes guy, shooter, that loved having a GoPro. Anytime a vehicle was moving, anytime anything was happening, we had a GoPro on top of it so that we got that action, and that could be worked into the B-roll. And again, B-roll is a key element that we're capturing, just things that you can fit into we tell little 2-minute stories that market a movie, 2.5-minute stories. So if B-roll helps tell that story, we will use it. Other questions?
Because you're in publicist and marketing and everything like that, first off, why did you decide that you wanted to do that?
Oh, why did I decide I wanted to do what I do? I decided that God wanted me to do that. I would not have picked the movie. When I always joke, big idea, nobody left big idea left everybody. So when different people were let go at different times, I said that was an interesting season. I was in entertainment. I will never be in entertainment again. 20 years later, I seem to still be in entertainment. So it's where God has me. It's where my relationships are. It's where some of the best people I've ever met are, and I wouldn't want to do anything other than what I get to do.
Amazing. And my second question to that then is, what are some mistakes and things that you've learned because of it?
Mistakes that we made. Okay, here's one. There was a Hollywood actor that was in one of our movies, and she was lovely. She didn't like working every night, overnight, for weeks and weeks, and we had to do shout-outs, teleprompter. We had to do shout-outs where she was, the marketing team needed, and the studio needed certain things said. And it's 3 a.m, she's got a break, we're trying to shoot her. She's like, you know what would be really helpful? A teleprompter. It just kind of, one of those mic drops. And she kept doing, because we kept feeding her the lines. But we learned on that it's always important to have that teleprompter. And the beauty is now you can put it on your iPad and you put it up next to underneath the camera and they're reading it like it is a real teleprompter. But that was a huge mistake we made. Because we came from this little independent world of, hey, we can make a movie and do whatever we ask the actors to do. And it's like, oh, you're a real actor. We will respect that. And so now we always make sure we have a teleprompter. One last fun Hollywood story for you. We had an actor who was in one of our movies, and it's really interesting. In the faith-based world, you've got the Kendricks, who you need to be a strong believer to be in the cast because you're representing Christ, you're representing the Kendrick brothers, you're representing the theme of the movie, so that's a really important thing. And then you also have other studios. Back in the day when Pureflix was making movies, they looked at their set as an evangelistic opportunity. So there was a former football player that became an actor who came to Christ because of the relationships that he built on the set as an actor, as a non-Christian actor at the time. So this was a movie, it wasn't either of those studios, so this was a movie that a studio did that had a really well-known Hollywood actor that it wasn't his passion, what he was acting. Had the EPK questions, his publicist wanted all those ahead of time, we got all those ahead of time. So he's read them, he's ready, sit him down, and he just 1 and 2 word answers, which are absolutely no good for an interview. Finally, he looks at me, he's like, Bob, you know the answer you want to these questions, write them out, we'll sit down in an hour, and I'll read each time and answer it. So I'm like, I just wrote all the questions and all the answers for this EPK interview. So that, again, the key is flexibility in this side of the business. And again, we're there to solve problems. He didn't want to answer questions. We answered them for him.
You didn't offer to sit in?
Pardon me?
You didn't offer to sit in for him?
Yeah. I think people would have been very disappointed if I had sat in for him. Yeah. So flexibility is the key, and being a problem solver. And back to your question, enjoying it. I mean, I still get excited if I'm going to a set in Spain and get to spend a couple weeks on the coast of Spain, or if I'm going to the middle of Oklahoma and sweating for an entire summer. It's just the idea that you get to be part of movie magic, even though you're not a gifted filmmaker. And all of y'all are gifted at what you do, so to bring that enthusiasm and that excitement into whatever area of filmmaking that you are, it's a joy to be a part of. If you don't have any other questions, I have run you 2 minutes late. I will be sticking around. I know, I'm sorry. I will be sticking around, so I'll feel free to ask me questions if you'd like, but thank you for being here. I honestly thought I was going to be here and then get to go over and see Dave because nobody would be here, so thank you.